Welcome. I've turned the recording on. This is Design 350, and it's our lecture for Tuesday, October 31st. We're not doing introduction today. I didn't update that. That's okay. We're just going to be going through the requirements and the first bit of information having to do with our study of land planning. You're going to get most of your survey lecture this week in the labs. So tomorrow during the lab, I will be doing a demonstration of the required drawings that should be refreshers, but if they're not, it'll be a new thing and you can get those drawings done quickly. And we are using AutoCAD, but you can feel free to use Revit, Dynascape, LandCAD, SketchUp, whatever you like to get it done. I will use AutoCAD. So here we go. Let's take a look and see what's up for this week. The first thing I wanted to let you know is in the playlist, I've got a real cool little quick one on study skills, know what is important. You don't have time to study things that aren't important. You might later on. There's a ton of cool stuff here, but you'll probably have to focus on what's important. So this is a little video that will help you know week by week what's important, and you can focus your work on that. All right. So please go over that one in particular. Why does that still say introduction? Dang it all. We're going over fair housing. There we go. That's what we're going over. That's kind of right up here. Okay, so you can get to everything through our VMware. Lectures and labs, if you can make it, that's cool. You've just seen this. This video, Social Justice by Design, was an introductory video that Professor Saka gave to the Design 330 group last semester in the spring. Just very well done. You'll also next week have an opportunity to watch one from Professor Carlson that was from land planning a year ago. And you just need this background data to make sense of fair housing and the rules. Otherwise, you might be going, this is a load. Why am I working so hard? What's that all about? Why is it there? This gives you a good background about what we're talking about when we start talking about the Fair Housing Act and affirmative furthering of fair housing. That is federal law, which means that our California law aligns with it, which means that our housing and planning acts align with it. Many people go, I bought my property, I can do whatever the heck I want with it. The answer is, no, you can't. That's just the answer. No, you've bought the right to follow these rules on your property. That's what you bought. You bought the right to follow the rules on the welcome in, Isaac, or whoever you actually happen to be. Sometimes names are a little bit funny as we come on. This is our Design 350 class. Welcome in. But this is really critical. There are certain things, and some of these have to do with our history and locking certain groups out of the economic advantage of properties. And we still do it systematically through our planning process. So the goal of affirmative furthering of fair housing is to drive our local planning processes to reasonable, concrete methods towards fair housing. And in this class, you're going to have a chance to look at data and use data to ensure that the decisions that you make on any one lot are following the Fair Housing Act, affirmatively furthering fair housing. So you'll get to look at some of that. We also have a very cool group that wants to do a project with the Design Hub, and it links right into this. And it's a foster youth. It's a foster youth support project for youth that have aged out of the system. And they've got a great idea, and it's very cool. And they'll be able to do it, and it'll be helpful. It'll be useful. It does meet all these things, and it's not going to be really hard for them. They got a great property. Oh, it's Leah. Okay. It's whoever was on that account last got it changed in. And you can actually, with those little 3 buttons on the right, you are down below. I think you can change who you're logged in as. So that's kind of cool. It doesn't matter. But it struck me while we were working on it that this is a great overall project, and most people who want to do something cool for other people have no idea what they're looking at or what they just have a great idea, and they have in their heart great intentions, but it can get flubbed up. So our goal is to give you certain land planning tools at the detailed, concrete level, the smallest level that you can use to help somebody make decisions that put their project in line with this, and then it's a slam dunk. Everything works well. So these are all things on the reading list. And then you have some stuff on survey to read about, stuff on land planning. I expect this to take you half an hour to an hour to read through, half an hour to an hour to read through, half an hour to an hour to read through. And I'm asking you to read through it in a certain way, which I'll talk about in a minute. And you'll see that in my tips on efficient reading. Okay, there's some things to do. There's 3 discussion postings, and the social justice one relies on the production one. There is a simulation. We're going to have other simulations later on, but this one actually will feed into land planning. And so I'll show you that one today. It's very simple. It's very easy. And you're going to see how land planning can be driven down to the most basic level. Okay? And so this is sort of our version of Animal Crossing. And you're going to get to do some stuff. And then what do you actually need to do? There's 6 drawings to do. They're very simple. Each one will take 5 to 10 minutes, so up to an hour. And then there's the survey lab. That's why this is a 5-unit course. And some of you wrote in your thing that says, okay, 6 hours was hard. I couldn't get 6 hours in. Well, you're just going to have to try to decide what you're not going to do. And if you email me, we can have a conversation about that. that will let you drop or not do certain things instead of others in accord with what your real goals are in the class. Okay, so I want to make that clear. But you should take a good 10 hours this week and maybe even more. It's a 5-unit class. Youch. Ouch. Okay. So there we go. Let's get into it. Let's look at the playlist. You'll also see on the playlist at the bottom, I've got the lab from yesterday, and you've got this one, which was how to do the property lines. And I'll demo those tomorrow in the lab, but you should look it over ahead of time. And then there's these 3 videos. Watch this one at 2 times speed. Watch this one at 2 times speed. Watch this one at 2 times speed. These ones I'll let you decide. You've got about an hour and a half worth of stuff. So if you watch it at 2 times speed, you'll be at 45 minutes. I would do this one right away and then sort of do these ones because they'll make the reading list make sense. Will make the reading list make sense. Okay, so that's the reading. That's the YouTube playlist. You'll get also today sometime I'll post the video of this lecture. I'll post tomorrow's video, Thursday's video, Friday's video. Okay. There we go. And the video that you'll see here is not of us out doing the stuff. That video is being produced for us. We'll do some other types of videos out there, but that one's getting a good production made. Okay, so let's take a look at, if you look at this thing that says how to study, it says know what's important. And one of the prime ways to figure out what's important is figure out what you have to turn in. So this stuff is all important. You've seen that. This is where I get my first impression. I can usually tell from this sheet what your grade is going to be, and the rest of it is just sort of a little bit of extra work. Okay. Get this one done. Now look at this one. This is called the 3K chart. Okay. That's not a KKK chart. That doesn't sound very good. It's a 3K plus. Okay. And for each topic, redlining. Right off the bat, you would write down what you already know. So you should get in here and write down what you already know about redlining. And this is redlining with respect to fair housing, not redlining with respect to marking up a drawing. Redlining with respect to fair housing. What do you already know? And it's just like, not everything you know, just what do you know? Then you go do your reading and you write down keywords from your reading. Racism, mortgages, FHA, okay. FHA loans, right? Category 4. Things like that you would write down. And then since these two topics kind of go together, what are you going to remember out of all this? So you do these two right away. And then you go find some keywords and decide what you're going to keep. And then using your keywords, you can go find visuals. A cool alternate way is called a word cloud. Let me show you what it worked. Have anybody of you used that? So let me just open a new one. I don't want to do that one. Let's see. Just try that one. There we go. So let me go to the input word. Let me go to where shoot. There we go. Type in a new word. So I'll go redlining, racism, mortgage guarantee, level 4, FHA, federal government. So I'll put those in there, and then usually there's a things, you know, it puts these things together, so I can get rid of this one. I should have put them into those. So isn't that cool? Isn't that just the grooviest thing? So that's very visual. Redlining, racism, love, and it kind of lets you go, and you can even put more on there, and then you can print it, or you can take and isn't that a cool way to do stuff? Then if I were to take that snip, put it right in there, and I've got a cool thing, and I can make that all sorts of right. I can do all sorts of cool stuff with it. Okay, so this becomes a very quick visual thing, and you would do the same thing on these. Okay, so where is that on here? That's this thing called preview, which is what I asked you to do. Preview. So when you preview something, you look at tables of contents, bold headings, image captions, and you write down keywords, lookup words, essential concepts. That's what I'm asking you to do on this slide. I'm asking you to do the same thing on this one, but to use a kind of a concept map. And you can go to MindMeister, or you can do the same, but it's the same thing. Okay, on land planning. Here's some areas that I want you to look at. Write down those keywords. Do the same thing, and the same thing for land planning. Okay, so you're going to be totally living in this world. So let me take one of these and look at it. Let me take this Fair Housing Act one. So it's part of the Civil Rights Act. So I would write that down, Civil Rights Act. Well, I'm going to skip what I already knew. So that's a really good one to know. Here's another, and this isn't really a keyword, it's a phrase. Oh, these actually go kind of in here. I'm in the wrong one. So you'll play around with this. That's sort of what you'll do is you'll go here and you'll just find keywords. And a riot act, some of those other ones. Title 8. That might be a good place to go. I mean, even as far as wheelchairs. You can use an objective business criteria. Some of these other things. So there's some cool stuff. When you go through the readings, you want to find those things that are really, really important. Oh my gosh. The federal government must affirmatively further the purposes of Fair Housing Act. That's kind of interesting. There's some other interesting, right here. Analyze housing occupancy and analyze factors which contribute to barriers and formulate a plan. That's pretty specific. And so in our planning proposals, even if you're just talking about, you know, setting aside a pad for a tiny house, if you can do this, it's a lock. You'll be able to do it. Okay, so that's sort of locking this together with this and how you can use those together. Okay, you're going to be living in the preview world. We will do more in the scanning world and the studying world on these very same readings in the future. Okay, so we're not going to skip to other readings. We're going to have the same reading list next week. Okay, and you'll be able to read them in a different way. Okay, does that make sense? Does that sort of help out a little bit as you're looking at what to do here, how to read it, and what we're thinking about? I just hit the nail on the head right here. That is our end goal, is teach you how to make a good planning submittal package that ensures that you check this off when you do it, when you submit it. Now, there's other things. Of course, you have to have the location identified, the property has to be identified, the drainage has to be identified, the stormwater pollution prevention plan has to be identified, the existing site has to be identified, the demolition has to be identified, all that other kind of stuff. And so we'll teach you how to do that, but we think that you've kind of gotten that in other things. Now you might go, well, how does that have to do with landscape? Landscaping may or may not be part of what you analyze and you do when you do this. But in part of the other categories, you're going to look at what's called um, environmental justice, where they look at are there trees in this area? If there aren't trees and you can show that you're increasing shade and foliage, you're almost a lock for getting in. I'll let you know, we just had a tree removal request for this gigantic pine tree behind my house that when a limb falls or the whole thing falls over, my house is dust. And so we got them to agree to take it out because they're not maintaining it. And they said, okay, and we'll plant another tree in the green belt behind you. And one of the commissioners very rightly said, well, wait. That area has 80% shade coverage. Why don't we plant it in a parking lot in one of the developments that has 10% coverage? And they said, yeah, that's a good idea, duh. And so they're going to do that. They're not going to replant a tree behind my house because we have plenty of shade. They're going to plant it in a place that furthers, okay, other categories in Davis, because Davis has a strong problem with redlined areas. And we need to address the problems in those areas. And part of it is they've never been given any facilities with shade and all these bus lines and parking, just like every other community. So you can do this on a very, very granular level if you're thinking about it. If you're saying, I've got 1 acre and there's some tree mitigation that needs to be done, where are you going to plant those trees? Go find the area that's a slam dunk and put it into your plan and your proposal. So even landscapers get in on this. How about how are you going to water that landscaping? Gray water, rainwater. Ooh, I chose bad landscaping. Let me get some other landscaping. Now, and this was right in my backyard, literally across the fence. So then they said, one of the neighbors piped in and says, oh, well, let's make sure it's a California native. So let's see. Some of you are, so Eric, your landscape, tell me, California native, is it good for us to plant a California native in replace of this big pine tree or not?
I mean, typically it's good if it's a native. I mean, especially if it's local, where you don't have to worry about extra emissions being used to get it to the property or whatever you're going to put it.
Well, let me
There
ask
are
you this.
sure.
With climate change and our developing climate, is something that grew here 100 years ago a good thing to
Uh,
put in now?
Good. No, that's true. I would say no. You have to kind of get adjusted to that and find something that maybe low water use, kind of plant.
Right.
You got other
Right.
factors.
So now you're speaking a more concrete language than California native, right? And guess what?
True.
That pine tree behind my house is a California native, but you would never find one in the valley. It's I don't even remember what they called it, but it's up in the area that's burning right now. That's where it's from, right? And
Yeah, it's not good.
it doesn't do well here. Um, and so yeah, you really get to be specific when you're talking about these things. And I know, Chilo would never tell you, "Well, put in a California native." I know that Chilo goes, "All right, look at what works on this landscape. Reduce fire hazard, reduce water use, still make it look good.
Make sure it fits.
Yeah,
Yeah, it has to
right,
fit.
right." And so, but people do this all the time. And so, And our tree commission rightly said, no, no, we actually don't use California native as the criteria. We're in a drought and it looks like it's going to continue. Our current tree list goes by one, what can we get? Two, how much water does it take? Three, how tall does it go and does it fit the area? And four, what is the water use for how long and blah, blah, blah. And so we're pretty sure that we'll get some sort of a tree that instead of growing 75 feet tall, and I'm sure in 10 years, if we left that tree alone, it would be 85 or 90. We'll probably get a tree that actually gives a good shade coverage at 20 to 30 feet. Well, we won't get the tree. Some nice parking lot at an apartment complex for a bunch of students will get a tree that will give some shade and actually be useful. So all of this works, and so it all works into this analyze factors of to remedy things. And there are other categories, and now they're starting to talk about, access to greenery and all sorts of other cool things. So does that make some sense as to how to do these readings and how they're going to be based on some of these things? So we will talk about survey. Survey is a very old thing, and it's all about who can do what, who owns what, and what are their rights. And I think they just found some even older than this. I think they found something that was way, way older than this tax register from another area that was all about who owns it and who gets to do what with it. So land planning has always been about who gets to do what on what piece of property. Okay? And so that's important for us to know. And then we'll talk about optical levels. That's what we're using. You need you to know a little bit about the survey profession. And then you should know about survey equipment setup, and we'll do more on that. And so then again, same thing with land planning. Land use planning ties hand in hand with survey because survey gives us the information of, where a piece of property is. Okay, so this is just good stuff to know. As you do it, you should just this week be looking at, okay, land use planning. There's a planning process. There's environmental sustainability. So you're just kind of looking through here and getting some stuff. Okay, looking suburban development. This is what I'm talking about, is you're just kind of going through it. Okay, it applies to cities and towns. There's something called zoning. That's really important. There's some zoning. Conditions that are necessary. What's good and bad about it? How can it be used well? What can it be bad about? Types of planning. So it's just, you don't have to know about all those. You just want to know that they exist. Okay, there's something called regional planning and regional councils. You need to know about those because we do have a top-down organization in our area. We have regional planning that is approved groups, SACOG, by the state, and they devolve into a regional council. The regional council gets into group or city councils, which gets into neighborhood councils, and so on and so forth. Okay? And then here's your workbook, here's your sample, and I'll give you some more. Okay, so there's an overview of what we're doing. These I think are straightforward, so I'm going to jump into Drop Bear Falls and show you what you'll need to do. And you just need to do it. You don't have to prove it to me. You don't have to do anything. You want to get into Drop Bear Falls, feed 3 animals, mow for at least 3 minutes, and get about 65% of the lawn done. So here's a little thing about it. You can look at that. Tells you what this game is. It's actually an experiential game where you are a park kind of ranger or supervisor. You're responsible for the park. We're going to start looking at how money flows in the park. And then we're going to do land planning based on your experience in this park. And so here's a little bit of how to play, and you can go to the game. We just put this into WebGL. It does take a little bit to load, so it's a little bit glitchy to start. So I'm going to press E to grab on. I'm going to turn off the music. And I'm going to turn in a circle because then it will have processed all the data points. So it takes me just a little bit. You can see over in the lower right, now all of a sudden it'll go. And I can start mowing the lawn. And I can look at my, let's see, what's my different views? I can look at this from different views. I can select my avatar. And somewhere in here it tells me, I don't remember how to get to my different views, but I'm just walking through, and you can see I can turn a little bit, and I can start walking over here and turn, and I can mow a little bit more. And those of you who mowed lawns as a kid or as an adult know that you could probably do better than I'm doing, but you can see I'm up to about 11% of my grass mowed. And I've spent 1 minute mowing. So you'll spend a few minutes doing that. And then press T and you'll walk over. And you'll feed one of these little boogers. It says press E to feed. So, and R to refill. And so it just shows that I've fed somebody and I've mowed for 1 minute. And so your goal is to get to a certain point. I've done all my mowing and all that kind of stuff. And this download becomes important later on because the different things you do down here gives you more visitors, which gives you more Vegemite sold. Okay, so the more percent you get done and things like that. And we'll talk about improvements to this area and what you can spend your money on to get things to start improving. So this should take you maybe 5 or 6 minutes. You've got kids that want to play this game, they can get on it too. Just a matter of of, and we're going to talk productivity on this too. How productive are you? Can you get this thing mowed quickly and efficiently? If you just spend all your time doing nothing or doing patterns that don't work very well, like right now I'm not being very productive because I'm not mowing as much as I could because I went all cattywampus. Almost spent the right amount of time mowing. I'm not a very good mower, am I? So there we got 68% grass mowed, 3 minutes, 3 animals fed. And I can download that. Bink. And I'll just take I'll take a screenshot. And you can just save those as you go. And that will develop as you get more and more data. This is going to develop into a land planning project based on your numbers that you got down here. You're going to have to make land planning decisions as you go. Okay? Any questions on that? What in the world? Okay. There we go. Those are the things that I wanted to go over. Do you have any questions? That's sort of your how to do and what to do and everything. If you don't have any questions, we'll start talking a little bit more about survey and land planning. Okay. Then I'm going to just let you do your readings on the foster youth, the foster care, FFH, and the Fair Housing Act. Just go ahead and do those readings. Let's talk about surveying. I'm just gonna give you kind of an overview. How it works. Okay, so this is called an optical level. And you can see somebody looks through it, and if this is level, it's also called a transit site, all sorts of things. If it's level, this line of sight, then whatever it looks at, you can tell the elevation because where you're looking is at the same elevation as the center point of this. That's sort of the emphasis of it. So you look through there and you see this target, and that right there, that number is exactly level with the elevation that you're at. And if the bottom of this rod is sitting on the ground, then if you know this elevation, let's say this elevation is 20 feet. I've figured out that where I'm looking through that elevation is at 20 feet, and that anything along that line of sight is at 20 feet, then if I go down 14 feet to the ground must be 20 minus 14, 6 feet. That's the whole concept of survey. It's just you've got an elevation that you know, and the rod pokes down to the ground from that elevation. So it's all just a subtraction problem. It's not even math. It's arithmetic. It's an arithmetic project. So that's kind of cool. It's an arithmetic project. So the trick in surveying is always to know the elevation of your site and to make it as level as possible. So you can imagine, I'm going to just do a real quick screenshot. If that's perfectly level, then even far, far away, when I look at it at that spot, it'll be level. But what happens if this thing is not level? Then the farther away I go, if I read my rod right here, of course my number is going to be off. This is the number that I wanted, but if this is not adjusted level, I'm going to read a really crummy number. That's why they call it a transit level, and why this week's survey is all about getting that thing level, or you're really, really messed up. Now, I'm going to show you in a couple of weeks, because we have the theodolite, you can make some adjustment for that, so that if you're not perfectly level, you can take 2 readings by flipping that thing and get that level out. So that's kind of cool. You can do that. You can get that set by readjusting it. So that's kind of a cool thing that you can do, right? But we want that very, very level, and all we do is we start taking elevations. We don't want that one. We do want that one. And that's how you get the elevations where the person has their rod sitting.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
So where do you, I mean, is where you stand, are you trying to find like the low point, I guess, and then start from there to go like up at the numbers?
It actually depends, and it's complicated. So you want to find a spot where you can get a rod reading in as many places as possible. And it depends on your rod. We have 10-foot rods, and ours extend to 20. So you want to be sort of around where, and you sort of want to be at a high spot, because you can always drop your rod down. But if your rod has to be up here too high, you can't read it, because you right? That's the ground. You're just seeing the ground. So your rod has to be, your level has to be high enough so that you can always get the rod down to the ground. But you don't want to be so far. And this is why, if it's steep, you might have to take many, many readings. And you might have to move your transit. And we will learn how to do that, and how to make adjustments for that. Kind of makes some sense. That's the goal right there. Now, I'm going to also give you a drawing where you can see it from the side and all this other kind of stuff. But I want you really just doing some basic readings right now. Excuse me. When you look at the drawings, what you're going to find is I've given you a data sheet that says, and this isn't looking through a thing. We've gotten our dimensions already. I'm on this one just looking at the position of my rod. I'm not taking elevations yet. So when you put your rod down, you have to know where your rod is, and then you take your elevation readings. So we're just going to do boundary points, and we're going to take the X and the Y distance to the rod. And in this case, this is the equivalent of taking a geo tracker, right? And you go walk over to a known point on your project and you punch the 00 button. So this is like a corner of a building or a light post in the parking lot or whatever. And you start walking around and it gives you X and Y numbers, where plus X is the east direction and plus Y is the Y direction. And so you just get the position of the rod, and you're not going to worry about elevation yet. I'm starting out simple. SOS, start out simple. And we'll just start getting, okay, your rod is right there, and we're just going to get X and Y dimensions, and you just punch those in to your AutoCAD and draw it. Piece of cake, go. Or whatever program you want. You can use Dynascape, you can use SketchUp. I strongly suggest you use AutoCAD or Revit. You're going to find it's much easier. My niece uses AutoCAD almost exclusively unless she needs a real cool, she's a SketchUp pro, so she'll do her visualizations in SketchUp, but all of her actual design drawings are done in AutoCAD, and she exports to Photoshop for her beautiful 2D rendering. She goes, no, why would I use something that's not as good as Photoshop to make beautiful, beautiful illustrations? So she works all three of them. She uses SketchUp so that she can do a walkthrough. She uses AutoCAD to get the good design. And then she puts her AutoCAD, after she's done a basic rendering, which she can do in AutoCAD, just colors and shades, she'll actually put it into Photoshop. Cool. Okay. That is really what I want to go over. Any other questions? Okay, then I'm going to stop the recording.